Hello, beautiful people. This is video 4 in the Online 20th Century Techniques unit. In this video, we'll be talking about harmony and specifically chord structures. In other words, right now we're going to talk about how chords are built, and then in later videos, we'll talk about how chord progressions are put together. We'll start with tertian chords, which is just another name for chords built on thirds. And up till now, all the chords you've studied have been built on thirds. But those chords have been used within a functional tonal system, where 2 moves to 5 and 5 moves to 1, and things like that happen. In the 20th century, we start seeing chords used simply for color or for effect, and not necessarily within a tonal system. Tertian chords will include tall chords, chords of addition, chords of omission, polychords, and split thirds. We will also look at chordal and quintal chords, which are built on fourths and fifths, respectively. And finally, clusters, which are chords built on seconds. Not surprisingly, these are sometimes called secundal chords. Before we get started, I want to give you a little preview of your next composition project, which is project number 2. For this project, you will choose a simple, well-known tune, something like London Bridge or Happy Birthday. You will then write 3 to 4 variations on it using 20th century techniques that you learn in these videos. 3 to 4 depends on how long the tune is that you pick. If it's a shorter tune, I'll ask you to write 4. But anyway, some of the techniques that you will use that might include changing the melody into a mode, like we did in the last video, or harmonizing the melody using some of the new chords that you will learn in this video, or some of the rhythmic techniques that you learn in subsequent videos. So in this video, I'll be doing just that. I'll be setting up familiar tunes with new chords, and you've already gotten a little of that in the melody videos where we sang the melodies in different modes. So keep your project in mind as you watch these, and hopefully you'll get some inspiration. I will post the full project requirements in about a week or so. So you'll remember that we're starting with tertian chords, which are chords built on thirds. And you've already learned tall chords, but in the 20th and 21st centuries, you will encounter tall chords that don't necessarily have a function and are used more for a coloristic effect. Here's a harmonization of Amazing Grace with non-functional tall chords. And although you can put some Roman numerals on them, like a 1-9 at the beginning and a 5-11 at the end, most of them are just there for color. Here's what that sounds like. When we talk about chords of addition, we simply mean chords that have an added second, fourth, or sixth above the bass. Again, you've seen these before, but not necessarily in this context. Here they are coloristic and non-functional. Chords of omission is a term we use when the third is missing from a chord, and that usually masks its quality. You can't tell if it's major or minor. Sometimes the chord will just be an open fifth, and sometimes a seventh will also be present. In rock music, you might have heard these called power chords. So here's a setting of My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean with chords of addition and chords of omission. A polychord is 2 or more different triads or seventh chords sounding at the same time. Composers may use polychords for texture or color or even a percussive effect, as we'll see in just a moment. Here's a straightforward example where the chords are divided between the right and left hands of the piano. So I will read these from the bottom up. In the first chord, we have C major on the bottom and G minor on the top. And next, E flat major and F minor. D flat major and G flat major, F major 7 and G7, F minor 7 and E flat major 7, and E major 7 and F sharp minor 7. And here's what it sounds like all together. Now in this example, as I said, the chords are divided between the right and left hands, but you may see the chords in the same register literally on top of each other. That's the case with this next example. This is a famous polychord that happens in the second scene of Stravinsky's ballet Petrushka, which is from 1911. In fact, this chord is so famous that it's actually called the Petrushka chord. You'll hear two triads a tritone apart. F sharp major, which is in first inversion, and C major. You'll hear them in the strings and brass on a tremolo, so it'll sound something like that. At the same time, you'll hear this kind of twisted trumpet fanfare that alternates between each triad. And just a warning, when I play this recording, you'll hear a few quiet notes from the piano in that first measure, and then the recording is very, very loud, so please be prepared if you are listening with headphones. Here's another example from Stravinsky's next ballet, The Rite of Spring. If you've heard of this piece, you probably know that there was a riot at the premiere in Paris in 1913 because the music and the choreography were considered primitive and scandalous to Parisian sensibilities. Now what you're about to hear is the music that happens when the curtain rises. It's a polychord made up of F flat major on the bottom and E flat 7 on the top. It's played by the full string section and accented by the horns, but you probably won't hear these individual pitches unless you've got really, really good perfect pitch. You might just hear the top and the bottom, but you're not supposed to really listen for the pitches because this is intended to be a percussion instrument, not really a harmonic function, not really a chord. Our last tertian chord is the split third. This is when a triad or seventh chord contains both a major and a minor third. Notice that in the second chord, we have an extended stem to show both C sharp and C natural. This is not uncommon, and you'll occasionally see it in real music. The split third can occur in the same register, like in the first measure where we have C major and minor at the same time, and A major and A minor. Or it can occur in a different register. So in the second measure, we have G major and G minor, but the B natural is in a different octave than the B flat. And then the last chord is a D7 with both an F sharp and an F natural. Now, a briefly nerdy moment coming up right here. This is something you don't have to know, but you might be interested to know. There isn't really a symbol for this chord, although in jazz you might see it called a major chord with a sharp 9, even though that's not exactly accurate because it's not a raised second, it's a flat third. So you sometimes will even occasionally see flat 10. Believe it or not, you'll probably believe it, there's actually a thread on Reddit about what to call this chord. Look it up, split third chords symbol, I think is what you want to Google there. Okay, here's a passage from a little bit earlier in Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. In the bass, you'll see that there's an E7 chord with a split third, G sharp and G natural. And there's also the split stems that I promised you. When you hear the recording, again, you'll hear this just sort of as a kind of a thumping bass percussion instrument. You won't really hear it as a chord, but that is what the chord is, a split third, G sharp and G natural. Moving on, some chords are not built on thirds at all. And in this example, we have chordal chords, which are built on fourths, and quintal chords, which are built on fifths. These chords were very popular in the early 20th century, but you also hear them a lot in two very contemporary places. One is in modern jazz, and especially big band music, and the other one is in modern choral music. For this example, we'll keep it simple. Here's Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, harmonized with quartal and then quintal chords. Clusters are chords built on seconds, and they are sometimes called secundal chords. There are two types of clusters. Determinate clusters are when the composer specifies exactly what pitches are to be played. So in this first example, we have E flat, F, G flat, A flat, B flat, all sounding together. And in the second example, we have, it looks like A, B flat, C, D, E flat. But again, the composer is specifying the pitches as a chord. When you have an indeterminate cluster, that's where the composer specifies an approximate range of pitches, and you basically just mush your hand down on the piano in that general area. So you see the symbol here. The first one ranges from about G to D, and the second one from about C to G above that. Now, if you're singing in a choir or playing in a wind band or some other kind of ensemble, the composer might just put some pitches in a box on the staff and say, improvise in this general area until the conductor signals you to move on. Again, this technique originated in the early 20th century, but you still see it used a lot in contemporary compositions. And you might think of Eric Whitacre. Clusters are a go-to technique for him. He uses them quite a lot. For clusters in real music, I'm going to ask you to turn in your course book to page 62, and I've reproduced some of the score for you here in this video. This is a piece from 1917 called The Tides of Monanown by American composer Henry Cowell. He's one of the first American composers that we're looking at. And he used clusters that look in the score like they're indeterminate, but he actually indicates with this key on the first page. He gives an explanation of what notes are actually to be played. So you can read about that in your course book. And then let's look at the actual score. On the first page, we see clusters in the left hand. And notice that basso 16 VA with pedal, that means they're to be played 2 octaves lower than written. So that's at the very bottom of the piano. And you play them with the flat of your hand here. Something like that. And then you'll see that there's a right hand melody happening above that. And notice the 2 different key signatures. We're going to talk about that in the next video. That's called bitonality or polytonality, where you have 2 keys going on at the same time. Okay, a little later in the piece, you'll see these clusters in the 3rd bar of this example, where they spread out over 2 octaves. And you wonder, how are you going to play these? Well, the performer plays these with their forearm. And that's why I really want you to watch the video of this piece. I'm adding it to the transition page. And please, before you go on to the next video and take the quiz and everything, just take a break and watch the performance of this piece, because it's pretty incredible. And I hope some of you pianists out there decide to program this when we finally get back to school. That's all from me for now. Thanks for watching. Up next, please watch The Tides of Monanown. That is linked on the transition page, and it is also the next video in this playlist. After that, watch video 5 on harmonic language, and when you're ready, please take quiz number 2. Stay safe, everybody. Miss you lots. Bye.